Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. In our previous class, which was the 9th class on the Great Master, we were discussing about the world teacher, the advent of an avatara who is born into this world with some sort of illimitable virtues. In India, whenever an avatara is born, he has some special virtues which make him special. He is not born as other human beings are born. So his birth is just to perform a divine leela. That is why we call that it is also known as Nara Leela in Sanskrit or in Bengali. Avatara's life in this world is known as Nara Leela because he takes up a human body. But because he takes up a human body, he is not born with all the limitations, though he has, of course, he is born with the physical limitations, and also apparently sometimes the avatara exhibits the mental limitations also, like grief, sorrow, which we discussed in the previous class. Ramchandra, when he was wandering in the forest and Sita was taken away, he grieved as if any husband would grieve for his wife. So we could see, and all the other emotions associated with a normal human being, he has to assume, though you may call it as a Leela. As in Sri Ramakrishna's case, Turiyananji found out. Swami Turiyananji, just to test Swami Turiyananji, Sri Ramakrishna asked him, "You see, I am suffering so much from cancer. It is so painful and so depressing." And he was complaining about throat pain when Turiyananji simply laughed and said, "Don't fool me. I know you, I can see you that you are in swimming in the ocean of bliss. There is some kind of happiness which you cannot hide from me." Because he was spiritually sensitive, he could notice that wonderful unending bliss, undercurrent of bliss, which is very common with these incarnations and these divine personages whom we call as Nitya Muktas. Those who accompany them also, they also come to perform some kind of leela. So they don't have any need to be born. They don't come with the three types of sorrow which we discussed, tapatraya, or maybe three types of dukkha. Atyantika dukkha nivrutti, that is the goal of a jiva, but not a goal of a nitya mukta. Their dukkha is an assumed dukkha, and as such, it is a kind of a sort of play, a divine play, so that they, as human beings, they can demonstrate before the world how to take care. So temporarily, though they may be assailed with these dukkhas, physical, mental, and the causal, where they saw these, they see that these sorrows afflict a human being, a normal human being or a normal jiva, and he seeks deliverance. He cries out in agony when he can no more suffer these agonies or these pains or dukkhas in his own life. When he cannot do it, he cries out in agony. When a large number of people cry, when they are carried away by a dark future, endless despair or terrible current of despair carries them, these people, uh, across the shore of life. When so many people, due to ignorance, take this world to be real and then suffer because of that, because of the loss of all the temporary things they have gathered around them, that is because of a lack of spiritual vision, then under such circumstances, the incarnation is born. And he is born. Why is he born? He is born to just show that if you remove the ignorance, the sorrow, if you remove the avidya, then your ego, the asmita, and all the raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. But if you define this sorrow in Patanjali's terms, it is very clear that they can be classified into five types, five types of painful obstructions, that is known as kleshas. So these painful obstructions are what causes dukkha in our life, whether it is gross, subtle, or causal. At any level of our existence, if there is any dukkha, it comes under these five categories. First comes ignorance, then comes asmita, a deep sense of ego, which makes us feel this pain. If the ego is not there, then you don't feel the pain. Ego gives rise, this ignorance gives rise to ego, raga, dvesha, many things that we like, which gives us pleasure, many things that we don't like, which gives us pain, and then we have this abhinivesha. These things we have to keep reminding ourselves. Perhaps you might think that I am repeating these things again and again and again in all the classes, whether it is a Raj Yoga class or a class on Vedanta which we hold on Wednesday, or whether it is the Great Master or Gospel. Many times these things come, these basic ideas, but they are the fundamentals of Vedanta. Unless we keep reminding ourselves about the real goal of our life, we tend to forget it. It is in our interest that the Shastras keep repeating things. Revered Swami Bhuteshananji Maharaj was once asked, Maharaj, when he was taking the Kathamrut Prasanga, that is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna classes, he used to take different incidents from the Gospel, and it has been serially recorded and published in Bengali. The original talks were in Bengali, which he gave at Belur Math. When he was the assistant secretary, a large number of people used to come to the library hall in Belur Math, and he used to deliver those classes. So they were collected together in 5 volumes in Bengali, known as Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrut Prasanga. The different incidents which he took one by one from the gospel and discussed. So there he discusses about this aspect, that one of the complaints or one of the complaints of the readers of the gospel is that it's a very nice book, but many things are repeated again and again. For example, Kamini Kanchan Tyag. Now they occur so many times, this attachment for lust and gold, or lust and wealth, or greed. Lust is greed. Greed of uh, greed and desire, that is greed and gold. That is what he means. So why Thakur is repeating again and again? Why is he again and again giving the same advice that you have to do nitya nitya vastu viveka, trying to discriminate between the temporary and the permanent, uh, the the real and the unreal, that is temporary, the permanent and the temporary. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. Then he talks about Namasparana, repeating the holy name. And then he talks about holy company, or repeating of the holy name. 4 methods, you may see it endless number of times he is repeating. Even in this gospel, which records about 72 or more conversations, there you will find so many times the same thing is being repeated. And even Hriday complained once. He said, you are repeating the same thing again and again. Sri Ramakrishna got a little upset. He said, What is this? What is it to you? You fool. I will repeat 100 times. That is my wish. What Sri Ramakrishna meant and what Swami Bhuteshananji explained in his Kathamrut Prasang is that Shastras, there is a word known as Punaravritti. Vritti means thought. Avritti means repetition of thoughts, memories. So Punaravritti means repetition of the same thing again and again. So our whole life, if you see, our whole life is nothing but repetition. We are what we are. Our personality is made of habits. How are habits formed? By repeated thoughts. Repeated thoughts give rise to repeated actions. Repeated actions becomes habit, and repeated habits become character. And that is how a personality is formed. It may be gross in the beginning, but as we go on repeating, as it becomes a habit, it becomes deep rooted. It becomes samskara. First, it starts with the gross, motivated by the subtle, that is our mind. It gets some inputs, it goes on doing certain actions. Once, if it is done, it is just an action. It's just like a wave on the ocean. It will come and create a sort of ripple in the ocean, and then that ripple will create ripple in the sand. But again and again, when the waves come, the ripples in the waves in the ocean create some sort of disturbance in the sand, and they are known as samskaras. So when the water comes again, it has a tendency to flow in a particular way depending on the sand. That is how the causal works. When the when we think certain things, when we see certain things, perceive certain things, when we do certain things, it has a tendency to repeat depending on what memory we have of that incident. Suppose you have a habit of eating sweets, and say you have eaten sweets for many number of times in both in this birth and the previous birth. So the memory of sweet, the sweet taste, the tongue remembers and the mind also remembers. So though the sweet may not be there, even a subtle thought that I should eat a sweet, it creates in you a desire to eat that sweet. And till you get that sweet and satisfy that desire, that subtle, that causal, from the causal level, the samskaras, if they are very strong, it will keep on giving thoughts. If you have control over your thoughts, then you say no. The mind may again and again crave for these sweets, but you will keep on telling it, no, you should not be eating it. And you counteract it. So the likes, the kleshas, the raga, the liking we have for certain things keeps on rising, motivated by our samskaras. And then when it comes to the mental level, before it becomes action, we have to act. We have to have a counter klesha. We say, oh, you like sweets, okay, you will not get it. So you develop a hatred, or maybe you develop a opposite emotion, which is known as pratipaksha bhavana. So it's a very great psychological truth that you try to counteract these positive desires and subdue it. That is all what is meant by vairagya. When Sri Ramakrishna says abhyasa and vairagya, when he says that that is the means, the only means, that only means that you have to develop counter habits. So our whole life, if they are habits, then they have to be subdued by counter habits. And that is why repetition is necessary. So now you understand why I repeat certain things, because it has become a habit for us to remember certain things but not practice them. Why? It's not any fault of ours. You may say that we are remembering these things, we are hearing these things 10 hundreds of times. Again, why should we have heard it once, now it is enough. Tell something new. That is what people think. They want some novelty, some new thing. No, wait a minute. So Swami Bhuteshanji says, Shastra says this punaravritti. Punaravritti means repetition. Punaha means again and again. Avritti means repetition. Vritti means thought. Again and again, a thought has to be given, which is contrary to the negative thought. When you do that, the old vritti slowly dies away. So the repetition of the mantra is one such punaravritti. Why do they say that you have to repeat the Ishta mantra so many number of times? Why repeat it? Repeat it once. If it is so powerful, it should act. No, it has to be repeatedly repeated or practiced till it becomes a habit, till it counters the old habits, till it negates all the effects which we don't see, which are at the causal level, which are at the samskara level, which are at the smriti level, the memories. They are all vrittis. So only punaravritti of these thoughts will serve the purpose. So no matter how many times you hear, that's why we have classes almost every day. It is not just for your sake, but for my sake also. I feel that every time I take a class or every time I get a chance to discuss, it is I who am getting the most benefit, leave alone others. Even if there are some of you may be attending this class almost every day, but it really doesn't matter. Even Monday, suppose I decide I might even take a class, because it's not something which is very difficult. I can take 1 hour every day, there is no problem. The reason being is, some people might feel that people, if they hear the same thing again and again, why will they attend? Of course, they may not attend. If they are after novelty, they will not attend. But if they want, if they or we, whoever is interested in this punaravritti, as Revered Bhuteshanji Maharaj mentioned, ke Shastras in fact recommend this punaravritti, because we have done avritti of wrong thoughts for centuries, not only this life, several lives. Is it a joke to contain it? Is it a joke to do what we want, what is good, what leads to Paramasukha Prapti, and get rid of Atyantika Dukha Nivrutti? No, it is not so easy. We want to get rid of Dukkha, we want some shortcut, we want some holy soul to come and bless us, but we realize finally that no amount of grace, as Holy Mother said, you may have the grace of God, you may have the grace of Guru, but if you don't have the grace of your own mind, nothing is going to happen. What is the grace of our own mind? The grace of our own mind is to repeatedly hammer these good thoughts and try to control the vrittis. So one has to lift oneself up by one's own effort. Though there will be there is punaravritti and satsang and all those things, they may help. But that satsanga, which M in his gospel says so nicely, I collected a jug full of waters from the ocean. Sri Ramakrishna was like the ocean. I took a small jug full, and that has satisfied my thirst. So what does he mean? That even after repeating hundreds of times, he was not happy. And he said it is just a jug full of water from the ocean. So imagine if we go to the ocean, our thirst will be quenched eternally, permanently. So that is the reason why I am repeating. I am not only repeating, but sometimes it may appear that the same thing is being repeated, because we need reminding ourselves. Just as it is difficult to form a habit, don't think it is easy to form a good, even a bad habit is not easily formed. So when you eat something for the first time, it is not a habit. It doesn't become a habit. If somebody has some kind of desire to smoke or do any such evil, or maybe not evil, but a negative habit, he has to smoke several number of times. Just once or twice doing that will not help. When you do it many times, then you become a habitual smoker or a habitual eater of sweets. So you want sweets all the time, and you just say, oh, that is what I like, that is what I like. When you say what I like, you don't remember it is one raga you are adding. And our personality is made of so many likes. Oh, then we have a long list of likes. We have liking for this, we have liking for that. I like this, I like that. So also, to counter it, we have to like the opposite also. That dvesha, that hatred for certain things, if we want to remove, we have to like the opposite. So that pratipaksha bhavana, trying to like, is what is what actually happens when we do repetition, like what we do now. The same thing which was discussed on Tuesday in the life of Holy Mother, the divine play of Sri Sharda Devi, perhaps will be repeated in our gospel class on Saturday, or maybe the great master on Thursday. The same thoughts will be repeated in the gospel on Sunday. And of course, we have the Wednesday class where we discuss about the science of human possibilities, which is the basis of all the other classes. The Wednesday class is the most important because that we have started right from beginning. We try to understand, for those who are new, of course, many of you may be knowing, but still punaravritti is there. Repetition always helps. So that gives us a firm background of what we should be expecting, how we should be looking at these different biographies. That they are not just stories to be heard. No doubt, even hearing the wonderful divine Leela will help in some way or the other because we are spending time usefully. But Shravana is not enough. We have to think deeply. There are some people who are habituated, they don't take everything at face value. They hear something, then they go deeper. They think, they try to apply it. So, how are these thoughts relevant to me? How will it get rid of my problems? How will it get rid of the dukkha that I face? Will it give me atyantika dukkha nivrutti? If it is not giving, then there's no point in attending the class. But all these thoughts, these are just the methods. They don't guarantee that all the uh, dukkha nivrutti will take place immediately. It will not take place, neither for you nor for me. It has to be repeated again and again. But because we get so many opportunities to raise the counter habit of thought, the positive thoughts, we stand a better chance in the near future or in the depending on what samskaras we have. We may hope that a day will come when these vrittis are slowly, these positive habits are formed, and finally we come to a stage where we become, we rid ourselves of the negative kleshas, the 5 types of kleshas. When they go or when they are become so tanu karana, that is they attain, they were reduced to a very mild state, then they are harmless, then we will never make any mistakes. But till then it is a struggle. We have to have this punaravritti. So the study of the divine play of Sri Ramakrishna, the why we want to study this is not Sri Ramakrishna our Ishta. For most of us, he is. And we should be happy by just repeating his name. He said, I have taken Diksha or initiation or some sort of Ishta mantra has been given to me and I am repeating it. Is it not sufficient? Yes, it is sufficient. If you do punaravritti, then nothing else may be necessary. But to remind that we have to keep on doing it whenever we have spare time. Can we confidently say that we are spending a major portion of our day, forget, or even a minor portion of our day, to do some kind of punaravritti? It need not be japa always, it may be thoughts. So if we bind ourselves to a certain routine, then these things become automatic. Taking, see, for you, for taking classes, I need to speak about it. I need to study it a little bit. I need to think over it. And that helps me more than anybody else. Many of you might be thinking, how can it help? Definitely, it creates some kind of samskaras, and with the hope that these samskaras will negate all the negative samskaras that we have accumulated. So it's true for everybody. So that's why, out of compassion for human weakness, avatars have to come again and again. That is also a punaravritti. If Rama came once and Ramayana was uh, understood by everybody, then there was no need for Krishna to come again. There was no need for Buddha to come again. He has to come again for two reasons, according to Swami Shardananji. Under the circumstances, the present circumstances, the message needs to be explained in a different way. When Buddha came, the need was different. When Rama came, the need was different. The dukkha was there, but it was manifest in a different way. So they come with a different message. They don't come because they have to be born, helplessly born like us. They come as free souls, they go away as free souls, give their divine message. It is the all-powerful Ishvara, which is the concept from which we get the concept of God, the all-pervading God. He becomes merciful. That is what Vedanta believes, and that is the truth. That he becomes merciful. He comes out of compassion for our human weakness. He takes a human form, again puts humanity on a spiritual path. Then he again degenerates. So Swamiji says these cycles repeat every 500 years. So his divine Leela, there may be waxing and waning in his appearance. He may come once, maybe for 500 years. There is no need. By the force of the present incarnation or the present wave, you can say, the Leela is enough. But this Leela is enacted again and again. Some people may be attracted by the old Leela of the previous incarnation. All need not be motivated or inspired by the same Leela. But whichever Leela you accept, because it is a divine Leela or divine play, the purpose of their incarnation is to remove the sufferings of humanity and give them eternal bliss. So, whenever such suffering affects any part of society, any country, any geographic location, God comes. So there may be an argument to say that why does he come in India so often? It's not necessary that he has to come in a particular geographic location to benefit others. Now, thanks to the progress that is humankind has made in communication and information technology, this message can travel over the world faster than what it did in the earlier ages. But the subtle vibrations, the subtle thought vibrations that the previous incarnations have left, they never die. That is one important thing to understand. They may not have manifested in a gross way in this yuga. Buddha may not be there, Rama may not be there, but the thoughts, the powerful thoughts, the inspiring message that they spoke of and they lived, they are still in the atmosphere, and one can easily get hold of them. But the further they are away from history, the more difficult it is to tune our minds. That is the need for newer and fresher incarnations. If they are nearer history, if they are nearer to us, both in time as well as space, then we find it easier. Not that people who are born in Kamarpukur or a place where the incarnation was born, it may be opposite. They may not be tuned. They may be very near the radio station. But if they cannot catch the frequency, if they don't have a proper equipment, they will not catch the waves. They may be next to the TV station. That doesn't mean everybody and anybody who stays in a geographic location which is next to the TV station. Of course, if he has a set, he will get the signals better. But if he doesn't have it, he there just as Sri Ramakrishna, I mean, there is a proverb that under the lamp there is darkness. So very often a prophet is not recognized in his own land. They may be proud that a prophet was born, but they don't try to understand. That is what Swamiji felt when he met Bal Gangadhar Tilak. He said, "You come to Bengal, I will go to Maharashtra." This was jokingly said, it has been recorded. He said, a prophet or maybe a great person is not recognized in his own land. You will have more influence in this part of the world, that is this part of India, and I will have more influence in there. There is a truth behind this statement, that people who think they are born in the same country as the incarnation has born, they feel a little overconfident that Sri Krishna belongs to us, but they don't go deep, and they don't try to fine tune it. They take it for granted. That is why Swami Vivekananda again and again mentioned, why was he appreciated so much in the West? Why did these wonderful women disciples who came from the West practically gave? None of them dedicated their whole life like the four Western, the Western women who did so much for Swamiji's cause. There were wonderful, powerful women as well as men in India. None of them helped his cause. He was recognized, he was praised, people clapped, they were proud that he belonged to a particular region. They said Swami Vivekananda belongs to us, but what did those people do for him? It is the people who were far off geographically. They came and helped his mission. In those days, I'm talking of those days. So geographical location does not make any is not necessary that the prophet will be honored in his own land. It is often opposite of that. Jesus was born somewhere, but see, where is the headquarters of Christianity now? It is in far off Europe, which he had never visited in his lifetime. So we have the church which was founded in Rome and in Italy. So also Sri Ramakrishna, you cannot limit him to the geographical location in which he is born. Far from that, there is a tendency to accept him in a gross way in the land of his birth. They think, oh, he belongs to us. So also with all other prophets, they take him for granted. But people who are further off sometimes have an advantage that they are curious to know. They're not just satisfied by reading his biography. They often go deeper than others. When Sister Nivedita met Swamiji, she was really wanting to know what this religion is. She found her master and she was so dedicated that she perhaps understood what Swamiji needed and did more for his mission in India than his Indian disciples. It's a matter of fact. It's a matter of fact and matter of history. History has shown again and again that, as Swamiji said, the prophet is not honored in his own land. So having said that, it doesn't mean whichever person, whether he was in close proximity of Thakur, like there were innumerable people like Hajara and others who were born, who lived with Thakur, saw him daily, and some of the priests who even criticized him, plotted against Sri Ramakrishna, also kicked him. There were people living in his who had the benefit, who if they were prepared, they could have the benefit of his satsanga. But no, it doesn't happen that way. There is no geographical limitation in this. When an incarnation comes, he may be having a geographical location where he was born, but that doesn't mean his impact will be felt more there. Quantity wise, you may have more following there in that local area, but quality wise, he can more people far further off from that geographical location may appreciate him. Having said that, the authors of Puranas according to Swami Shardananda. When these such world teachers come, they classify him not on account of his historical birth or geographic location. They classify such avatars as benefactors of universal humanity, irrespective of where they were born. The impact that they create, the impact Buddha created, was not centered around his birthplace, that is Lumbini, somewhere near Nepal. It created an impact beyond the borders, in far off nations. Of course, in India, but in other countries as well, where was so far off. In those days, it was so difficult for ideas to travel. People had to go on sea voyages. Now, instantly, any thought becomes global. It's very easy. So, repeated observations, appearances of these divine incarnations, the avatars, is the reason why uh, the scriptures say that the reason why they appear again and again is to satisfy the needs of that present age, the peculiar needs, the specific needs, the specific problems of Satya Yuga or Dwapar Yuga or Treta Yuga are not the problems we face today. Our problems are different. The solutions also have to be different, but the principles are same. So, one who is they say an avatara, one of the qualities of an avatara is that he is omniscient. Omniscient means he understands the thought vibrations of that particular age. So, when an incarnation comes, we have to remember that he is equipped with certain sensitivities. He understands what is the ailment of this age. What is the major problem in this age? Skepticism, lack of belief, scientific materialism. These were the new things. So it required a new message. Too much of attachment to wealth and greed and lust and gold. That also comes when the materialistic civilization, once man is fighting for survival, his needs are different. Once he gathers money, then greed becomes more dominant. If you have enough to eat, if everybody in a country has enough to eat, still man will not be satisfied. Even in an ideal case where everybody has enough to eat and a small house to live, he will not be happy. He wants bigger and bigger houses, bigger and bigger gadgets, bigger and bigger cars, bigger and bigger things, and more wealth. Why is it? Because he has, his needs may be met, but his greed has not been met. That is why Sri Ramakrishna had to say the need of this age is not survival like in the past ages. The past ages, people were barely able to survive. They had to work very hard, grow certain crops, and if nature is not kind to them, they would simply die. Vast, even in the beginning of this last century, you find the famines killed millions of people, which cannot happen now. Now you don't hear of people dying of starvation. They may die of pandemics, they may die of luxury, they may die of overindulgence in pleasures, they may eat away and kill people, but it is not hunger. So the problem is different. In this age, the problem is more of affluence. We have a superabundance of choices to satisfy our greed. We have so many choices now. We enjoy certain thing for certain period of time, throw it away because there is another option available. There are so many varieties. Earlier, perhaps, to take a simple example, when TV came, there was perhaps one national channel and people used to watch that. But now you have hundreds of channels. So there is more distraction. There is more diversion. So Sri Ramakrishna had to come with a specific message to address this, not to address the problems we faced when he was born, but to address the problems we will face in the future, 500 years later maybe, because that message has to last. So it has to be compatible Like we have so many versions of the computer. We have versions which help us. We have lot of uh, versions. The old version works in the new version, but the newer the version, you have to, the computer runs with that new version of the software. So also these incarnations, when they come, uh, they have this peculiar tendency to modify the message, to update, you can say upgrade. We call it computers, we call it upgradation. So every incarnation is a upgraded version of the previous one. That is the law of nature. That is why in the beginning we started with a mantra, Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarva dharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Avatara Varishta, he is a manifestation. Why is Avatara Varishta? Because he is the latest version. He comes with a appropriate solution for this age. You may get the same inspiration. The computer can as well run with the older version of the software. Definitely it will work, but for effectiveness, you need a later version. That is what Sri Ramakrishna meant. Not that there is any fault, the computer is the same, only the software changes. That is the idea, that is the subtle idea behind calling Sri Ramakrishna an Avatara Varishta. People think, why are we comparing him with the previous incarnations? If I say Krishna, as some of the people believe that our God is the only God, Krishna is the only incarnation. That, of course, is never said. It is the specific need of the age that he comes to address. They have an eternal message. One should remind oneself of that. That is why Sri Ramakrishna said, follow your religion, doesn't matter, provided you understand that incarnation properly in depth. If you hold on to the Krishna incarnation, when you say Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, there is nothing wrong in that. But it is not the gross Krishna. Go deeper, understand his message. Take him, you have to take the essential message of Sri Krishna, the central message, and not the interpretation of that particular age, which may not be valid now. If you get the core central theme of Krishna's message, it is valid even today. So also the other prophets, whether it is Buddhism, they will speak the same thing. As Sri Ramakrishna said, all the jackals howl in the same way. You can recognize the jackal may be in this country or another country. The voice they make is same. So also these different incarnations, if we understand the core of their messages, there should not be any problem. But the problem is that we don't understand the core and we fight over the external things. And then we say our God is superior because he did this or he did that. There's no scope for such quarrel. This we have to remember. So, advent of Avatara, the last two paragraphs of the first chapter, which we are discussing, the great master, Swami Shardanandji says, the Avatara who understands in a very subtle way the need of the present age, and he discovers a new path, Sthapakaya cha dharmasya. Now, this should not, many people say he has founded religion, and that is what the previous followers of other religion think, that their prophet or their incarnation who appeared founded a religion, a new religion, and they say all the others are false. That is wrong. That is not the meaning. He is a discoverer of a new religious path. Jato mat toto path. There are different paths, but the core is the same. So he appears in order to fulfill the need of the age. This is a very important aspect. So we have to remember, I am going a bit slow in this great master class because we have to understand Sri Ramakrishna. Superficial description of his life and character or life and message will not be enough. It would be very nice, of course, to enjoy Sri Ramakrishna's life as a story. For those who are familiar with the rural Bengal settings, they may like to just poetically appreciate, oh, that was Bengal, oh, that is the place I lived, the Pukurs and Kamar Pukur and the beautiful countryside. It may be very good to understand him and in that context. And then you identify that, oh, my childhood was spent in such a rural setting. Oh, I want to see Sri Krishna as the baby Gadadhar. They may be very good from the poetic point of view. But whether he was born in a rural setting full of lakes and greenery, or whether he was born in the desert, as in the case of Jesus Christ, or whether he was born in the mountains, as in the case of Buddha, the core message is what is more important. He might as well have been born in a desert. He might have been born in the western part of India. It really doesn't matter. But because he was born in that setting, we get joy, a kind of poetic joy to understand his message in that rural setting. That is the only value it has. Because those who have been to those places, or those who belong to that particular place, they have a added benefit by understanding what it means. That's why one of the Swamis had to publish a book. Swami Vidyatmananda had to publish a book where he went to, in 70s, early 70s, he went to rural Bengal, especially Kamarpukur, Jairambati, and took the pictures and explained the parables of Sri Krishna with the help of those pictures. So when Sri Krishna mentions certain things which are peculiar to his village or to the rural surroundings of Bengal, unless you see the picture, you don't understand. For example, the bullock. He says the bullock grinds the seeds and it turns round and round. That is how the oil seeds are extracted. Now, unless you see the bullock in its rural setting, you will not understand. That is the only value it has, because to understand these parables, you have to understand the rural settings. That is where explanations are necessary. That is where footnotes are necessary, or that is where some kind of illustrations are necessary. Otherwise, you will not understand. So that is the only advantage. But that doesn't mean that you have to be born in a village to understand Sri Ramakrishna. You can be born in any high-tech city or any part of the world. As long as you understand these scenes, this one, you have to remember this particular thing when I start with the Balya Leela, where there is not much philosophy, but just the rural setting. But Swami Shardanand says it also has an intrinsic value. Why do we think of the exploits of Sri Krishna, Bal Gopala? There are certain emotions which are associated with small children. The avatar as a child, how does he look? We can identify ourselves, our children, with that avatar. That's the reason we discuss, not because we want to understand how childhood was in a particular part of India. That is not the reason why we study these incarnations and their childhood life. We can associate certain hints or certain messages we get even from his childhood, which cannot be neglected. The incarnation starts his divine Leela not only after birth, but even before birth. The visions his parents had, his father had, his mother had, these are also important. That is why Swami Shardanand starts with the ancestry of Sri Ramakrishna. Not only his father, but his father's father, the Dere Gam, the Dere village, which is still there, where they were driven out. For some reason, his father was Khudiram, was very honest, and he refused to tell lies. So the village headman got angry on him. He said, "Why you are not telling untruth? Because I told you, I ordered you to say something, and you did not say." So he drove him out of that village. So unless we understand that, it is very difficult to appreciate or get into the core message of his father's life, his father's character, his mother's life, his mother's character. All these put together give a complete picture of Sri Ramakrishna. So his Leela starts even before his birth. That is the reason why the biography starts with his grandfather, his ancestral village. So the ancestry also becomes an important part. And it does not end with his Mahasamadhi. That is one thing you have to remember. So it is very well known that Bhagavan Sri Chaitanya, more than a little over, say nearly 500 years ago, he was born. And he aroused a certain kind of passion for God by chanting the name of Hari. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So after 500 years, you see the coincidence. Swami Vivekananda says practically every 500 years, roughly, this cycle recurs. So to satisfy the need of this present age, you will find that God, out of infinite compassion, the universal mind of the Ishvara comes as an incarnation to uh, to give a certain message. Now, the reason why is born in a remote place of India, which was which was under the colonial empire, and which was considered by many people of the world as an underdeveloped country, a country which was enslaved by a foreign power, which was supposed to be mightier than them in all ways, physically, mentally, every way, uh, education, science, technology, everything that the colonial power had was considered to be far superior, and the younger generation believed in that. So why should that incarnation come? Why should that compel the Ishvara to incarnate in India, a country which is viewed as poor or contemptible by many foreigners? Anybody who came here, they spoke of the ignorance, the superstitions, the idol worship. Everybody who came, even the reformers, even the educated Indians themselves criticized this. And you will find that as it actually happened, Sri Ramakrishna followed those very principles. If people thought worshipping a god in a temple was bad, it was Sri Ramakrishna who worshipped him in the temple. And that is how he, uh, though the foreign powers or the so-called educated class of Calcutta in those days, they did not understand the significance of the rural setting in which he was born. They thought, oh, how can a great soul be born in such a under such poor conditions, under conditions where there is so much of ignorance, so much of poverty, so much of lack of health facilities. By all means, even Jesus, when he was born, and the other prophets, when they are born, the local area where they are born and the area of their influence when they grow up, they are totally different. Sri Ramakrishna had to come to a modern day city, Calcutta. Even if he has lived in Kamarpukur the whole of his life, somehow some people would have gone there and then got the message. That is not the issue or the point. Here, the point is that to be born in such a rural setting, which is considered by many people as a backward area, materially, at least materially, it was backward. It was full of ignorance. There was so much of superstition going on. Some people were dying of famine and all the natural forces. So many people, there was lack of facilities. Compared to that, Calcutta was totally different. So when we have to study these different settings of Sri Ramakrishna's life, we begin in the next class. We will begin with the childhood days, the Balya Leela, as it is known. Balya means child. So the childhood days, which forms a significant part, for which Swami Shardananji got material mostly from Hriday and other people, because they were, if not Hriday, some elderly people of Kamarpukur who were still alive. They gave a very good history. Some of them were lucky to survive Sri Ramakrishna. They were older than Sri Ramakrishna and they lived long enough to tell or to narrate these wonderful incidents of his childhood. Otherwise, there was no chance. It is good that the biography of Sri Ramakrishna was written when people who had seen him were alive. But that is not the case with most other biographies. Most other biographies were written by people who had never seen Buddha, who had never seen Jesus, or maybe who had never seen the other prophets with whom they lived. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the biography was written much later. So it's all second-hand information. Whereas in Sri Ramakrishna's case, thanks to modern technology and the recording which M had done and many other people had done, they had access to some kind of basic technology. Of course, there was no recording facility, otherwise, we would have got the voice and the actions could be recorded for posterity. But that didn't happen. At least in print form, we could understand, or the age was a transitional age when facilities were available. M could record. He had a diary which he maintained. He could meditate on that. He gave us a wonderful account of his conversations and also his life. And Swami Sharadananji, of course, took a lot of pains, gathered facts, cross verified them with the people who had actually lived and seen Sri Ramakrishna, not only as a young man or a grown up man, but as a child. So there were people very much alive in Kamarpukur, Jairambati, and also some parts of Calcutta who might have visited Sri Ramakrishna when he was young. And of course, his relatives were also there. His nephew was there. There are many things which have come from Hriday, who had heard from his parents or maybe his uncle and all those people. So this is how a great incarnation has been studied and recorded. So India has been blessed. So Swami Shardanji concludes that once again we find India has been blessed to witness the advent of the Supreme Ishvara, the Supreme One. Incarnations are always of Ishvara or Shakti. To fulfill the need of this age, he has come. He was born long ago as Ramachandra. He was again born as Krishna and then again has come as Sri Krishna. These are his own words. When Swami Vivekananda did not accept him, he fought for 6 long years, as he told Sister Nivedita. He says, "You are doubting me, you are fighting with me, you are quarreling with me, you're trying to understand, because I can understand your doubts, I can understand your difficulties in accepting me as a guru." That is what uh, Sister Nivedita once felt very sorry. And she said, she expressed her inability to understand what Swamiji was telling. He said, "Don't worry, you at least have some better faith than me, because I fought for 6 years. 6 years was the period, 80 to 86. Hardly 6 years out of 49 years or 50 years of Sri Ramakrishna's life. Swamiji could be in his company only for 6 years. But he said, I had to fight every inch of the way. There was so much of doubt and skepticism because of his modern education that he found it difficult. How can it be possible that there can be such divine manifestation? Is it some kind of hypnotism? So, right from the first day, you will find Sri Ramakrishna is being tested, and Swamiji was allowed to be tested. Naren, as he was known at that time, was allowed to conduct all sorts of tests. And then finally, when Sri Ramakrishna found that it is time that I give him some final conclusion, otherwise he will always be in doubt. So that's why he says, finally, even now you have doubts. He who has come as Rama and he who has, a thought just came to him when Thakur was on his practically in his last days when he was bedridden. He thought, what a frail looking body. How can an incarnation suffer so much? So that modern scientific, so-called scientific mind rebelled against the idea that he is an incarnation. And the thought had just come to him. Swamiji writes, it just occurred when I was at his bedside, looking at him, looking at that frail body. He was just thinking, oh, he is suffering so much. Now, if he can say, if he can read my mind and tell me that he's an incarnation, then I will believe. This thought had hardly come in his mind. Immediately, Sri Krishna said, oh, even now you're doubting me. He who was Rama, and then he said it with such a strong voice, in spite of his problem to speak. He could not speak, but suddenly the voice became very loud. And that is what Swami Shardanji is quoting here. He says, he who was born as Rama and he who was born as Krishna in different ages has come again as Sri Ramakrishna. And then he added something very significant. He said, but remember, it is not according to your Vedanta. I mean, what did he mean? According to Vedanta, all of us are incarnations of God. There is no need for God in Advait Vedanta. We have the same Brahman, which is the background. In that sense, we are as much part of Brahman as an Avatara or as an Ishvara is. So, what is the difference? The difference is that the Ishvara alone, or the concept of Ishvara, when we accept the duality, when we accept Maya, when we accept Prakriti, it is the Prakriti, it is the Shakti, or is the Ishvara, the manifested Brahman alone who can take an incarnation and come to establish eternal religion. So that's why he had to say, not from the point of your Vedanta, means your Vedanta means the Advait Vedanta. That is what Sri Ramakrishna told. And then Sri Ram Swamiji was totally convinced. That was the last. And then, of course, he gave his entire power to his beloved disciple. And he said, from today, whatever I have acquired, just as he gave, he dedicated his whole sadhana to Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi's feet and predicting a great future for her to become a source of inspiration for uh, women in the world to develop and to uh, uh, in, uh, develop and show the concept of motherhood of God. And not only that, to be a source of inspiration for women, he said, I am giving everything to you. So that was one of the reasons he was incarnate. So he gave that power to Ma Sharda Devi, and also finally he blessed Sri Krishna. He blessed Narendra. Swami Vivekananda, Sri Krishna blessed Narendra by saying that whatever I had, I have given to you. I am now a fakir. That was during the end of his life. And he said, with that, he gave the message that became a conviction in the mind of Swamiji, who had doubts till then, that he who was Rama and who came as an incarnation to fulfill the need of a certain age in Dwapara and Treta Yuga, as Rama and Krishna, has been born as Sri Krishna in this age. That put all the doubts to rest, and that is how we accepted. So in the next class, we finish the introduction this time. And in the next class, we'll find out that what is the need. Before we discuss his birth, there is a small, you may say it is another small introduction to the childhood life, the first part of his biography, five part. If you divide, then we have the Sadhaka Bhava, then we have Guru Bhav Purvarda, Guru Bhav Uttararda, two parts, and then finally Divya Bhav and Narendranath. How that message was transmitted to Ma Sharda Devi and Narendranath for taking it further. So we will meet for this class next Thursday, and let me see if there are some questions in the chat. Yeah. Oh, there is one question which is a technical question. Swami Vivekananda has recorded his own voice. He didn't record his own voice, which is a song. If yes, where can we get it? Now, this is a bit debatable because the recording that was got, it was got much later, much later, because they said the original gramophone record, which the Mysore Maharaja had arranged to record, that had become so bad that it had to be processed in some of the best labs in America. Then they transferred it, then it was transferred into digital form. So a faint recording is available. But the problem with that is the authenticity of that recording is not 100%. So that is why, though it has been published, there is a nice article. I can share it on WhatsApp, and there is also that audio which also I can share, but it has to be verified. In the sense, there's no way we can verify it now. It has come through many channels, and finally what we have is so indistinct that you may get it, but I don't think you will be able to appreciate that, because even with the best technology they could not retrieve the information of that gramophone record, which was cylindrical in those days, the wax cylinders. They say there were two records made, one by the Mysore Maharaja, one was made in America. But the Mysore Maharaja managed to record he had imported those things from USA perhaps, and he arranged for a recording. Swamiji sang a song. That is what the research article claims. There may be truth. I'm not denying that it is not truth, but that recording is not very clear, and moreover, it is not very 100% authentic. So I can share that if you. There is another question now. If there is a strong samskara to say draw, paint, a strong like, compulsion to be oneself and enjoy higher pleasure, should we continue with that activity? Of course, there is nothing wrong if you really, because that will at least the thing that these pursuits will do, a strong sanskara like drawing, painting, or the higher pleasures of life, they have the wonderful capacity of subduing the lower tendencies and the lower likes and dislikes. So its purpose is not ultimate, but it is relative. So in a way, it is good to counter the lower samskaras with higher samskaras. That is how evolution takes place. You find interest, more and more interest in music, in writing, in painting, and higher or more subtler forms of pleasure that will prevent you from enjoying the gross pleasures of life. That is the only value it has. Of course, that is very great for most of us. And once we get established, we should not get stuck there. That art, that painting, that drawing, though it is based on samskara, they have to be directed to the Lord, and we should hope that it takes us higher and higher in evolution. We should not stagnate. That is what happens with great poets. They get a glimpse of the infinite through their wonderful poetry when they see nature, Wordsworth and all, and the other artists, but they get stuck at it. There's no harm in pursuing that, provided you can transcend it. So that is why we need spiritual practices to cultivate, but as a preventive measure, to prevent from becoming very gross. They are extremely useful and they are desirable. Okay. So I'll take your leave now. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.